It's Friday the 13th. We haven't had one of those in a while, and it's been a while since I've reviewed a Friday the 13th movie, as I do every Friday the 13th. Unfortunately for me, at least, we're up to my least favorite Friday the 13th film, Jason Goes to Hell. I'll explain why I dislike this one so much in a second, but any chance to talk Friday the 13th is always a fun time. So let's go back to the year 1990 and follow Jason into hell. Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, aka Friday the 13th Part 9, aka The Dark Heart of Jason Voorhees, and aka The Anniversary of Jason, was released in 1990. It's directed by Adam Marcus and written by J. Huguely, Dean Lorey, and Adam Marcus. Below this review, before the comments, I do have a list of other Friday the 13th films I have covered leading up to this one. Alright, let me start out by saying I'm not a fan of Jason Goes to Hell. In fact, I loathe this movie. I know this film's got its fans, but if you're looking for an adoration for this one, you're not going to find it here. The film is the first of the New Line Friday the 13th films, and it's indicative of how the company really didn't respect the franchise or want these films to succeed. If I were a conspiracy theorist, and you all know I am, I would think that the folks at New Line simply bought the franchise to bury it, since it really was the only competition at the box office for their main man, Freddy Krueger. Now I think they wanted the money, especially when it came to a possible team-up of these two, but in terms of respect for this much-loved movie series, it really didn't seem like anyone tried to make a good movie here. Jason Goes to Hell simply is a film made by folks who most likely didn't see the series, weren't fans of the series, and knew nothing about what fans wanted from a new installment. It's a great example of producers thinking very little of the fans and delivering stupid cliches, cardboard characters, and ineffective scares because they think that's what fans are looking for and that they're too stupid to know the difference between a good and a badly made film. As my coverage of the Friday the 13th films would indicate, I'm a fan of the series. Even the worst of the series, and this one most definitely is, has some merits, and I'll struggle to find a few of them later. But I remember hearing about this Final Friday and scoffed right from the beginning because we were given the final chapter 5 movies prior, and that didn't stop them from proceeding with more. I also remember going to see this one in the theaters despite the fact that Part 8 was such a dud. Still, the ad campaign was bigger, as was the budget, so I was hoping for a better installment and went with a group of friends to see this one. I don't know if you've had this experience before, but have you ever gone to a movie and felt embarrassed for the movie that you're watching? This was the experience I had with Jason Goes to Hell. My friends knew I was a Friday the 13th fan, and sitting next to them in the theater, I could almost feel them judging me for liking this series as the shitty movie played out in front of us. Not only were my hopes dashed, but now my friends thought I had horrible taste in movies too. Things start out promising enough in this installment. A plucky young gal in a baseball hat. There seems to be a lot of women in baseball hats in this one for some reason. Arrives at Crystal Lake, and of course, after a bulb burns out and she replaces it, she immediately strips and takes a shower. As fast as you can say nip slip, Jason appears and starts swiping away at the gal with his machete. She runs out of the house, leading Jason into the open as a military team pops out and unleashes hot lead hell upon Mr. Voorhees. The whole ballistic battle ends with someone tossing a grenade at Jason and blowing him into bits. Now this opening was actually pretty decent. We get some nudity and a typical final girl chase. And I kind of like flipping the script and having all of this being a trap for Jason, as very rarely do we have the tide turned against Jason, with him not being the one in control, especially not in the opening moments. Sure, I would have liked Jason to take on some of these military types and maybe dismember a few before the grenade was thrown, but that's but one of many missed opportunities for cool here for first-time director Adam Marcus, who went on to write the screenplay for Texas Chainsaw 3D. And while I think Marcus was way out of his element here with the production, I did really like Marcus's Christmas horror comedy called Secret Santa. I'll most likely be covering that one this December for Ho Ho Horrors. Back to Jason. Remember the iconic Jason on the mobile home shot from Part 6, or the epic battle between Jason and Tina in Part 7, or even the fun Jason in Times Square scenes from Part 8. All of these films were not perfect, but they provided some moments of coolness that showed him doing something fun and new. None of that was in this film. Jason gets no cool kills, and the opening scene against the military unit could have been that scene appeasing fans looking for another reason to love the character. One of the cardinal rules of the Friday the 13th films is that you simply don't make fun of Jason. Make fun of the stupid kids, make fun of the scary situation, but nothing kills the bite of a villain than having someone make fun of the killer. See Busta Rhymes' showdown with Michael Myers for a prime example of that. In Jason Goes to Hell, not only does he get no cool scenes, but everyone is making fun of him. The mortician talks about shitting on his chest, they make hamburgers shaped like hockey masks. Even Kane Hodder gets into the action, and as a security guard, he calls him a pussy. This does nothing to make Jason scarier. It makes us laugh at him, thus making him less ominous and less frightening. Wanting to take this series into a new direction, they decided to toss out everything we knew about Jason and make him into a supernatural creature that swaps bodies. As bounty hunter Cretan Duke, played by Stephen Williams, explains, "We haven't seen the real Jason. He wears bodies like we wear suits." Since it wasn't a huge blockbuster of a film, the producers didn't think anyone saw the hidden, so basically they swiped the entire film by having Jason's real form be that of a worm-like creature that travels from one person to another through the host's mouths, eating up the life essence of that form, and then slithering into another mouth soon after. So instead of Jason, the bulk of the film has us following around different normal people who walk stiffly and murder, looking like Jason only in their reflections. A Jason film without Jason in it. It worked so well when Part 5 and Halloween 3 flopped, didn't it? Granted, I love Halloween 3, but it was still a huge bummer not to have Michael Myers in a Halloween movie. On top of that, out of the blue, Jason has an all-new motivation. Gone is the sense of revenge that was ingrained into the character ever since Part 2 to pay back anyone to tread into Crystal Lake territory because they remind him of those who killed his mommy. In Jason Goes to Hell, Jason takes a page from Michael Myers' playbook and is in search of his relative to murder them. So a sister is cooked up in the form of Diana Kimball, played by Buck Rogers' Aaron Gray, and Jason is an uncle and a granduncle too, as Diana has a daughter, Jessica, who also just had a baby, making them a target as well. The reason for this sudden urge to use Heritage.com is that the only way Jason can truly be reborn is if he possesses someone within his lineage. More made-up shit, not by piecing together threads from previous films, but just to support the half-assed plot. Once again, the filmmakers behind this one had no idea what a Friday the 13th film is about. They even introduce an old Voorhees house, which never existed before in the films and somehow still stands in Crystal Lake despite the Voorhees name being such a bane to the town. They even changed the name 3 films ago to Forest Green. And they misspelled Voorhees on the house, which shows how much the production team really cared about this film. But of course, they left the vacant Voorhees home still standing and full of dusty furniture untouched for decades. The place even houses such treasures as the Necronomicon from the Evil Dead series and the Crate from Creepshow, as useless winks to other far better horror films you wish you were watching instead of this one. These member berries only mess up an already convoluted storyline. I know there are those who are convinced completely that Jason is a Deadite and love the Evil Dead connection, but I loathe this idea as it degrades Jason by making him the product of another franchise. Damn it, Jason is the king of the slashers and deserves to stand on his own. But while the body swapping route is a bad way to go, in some weird sense, it kind of follows a pattern that occurs in the films that lead all the way back to the original. In the original, Crazy Ralph claims that Crystal Lake has a death curse. Now, if you follow the film, Pamela is the killer in the first film until she's killed by one of the counselors. At that point, through a fuzzy dream or fevered reality, Jason makes his first appearance by springing out of the lake and pulling final girl Alice underwater. For the next 3 films, Jason goes on a killing spree until the final chapter where he's murdered by Tommy. In Part 5, a Jasonless film, the hockey mask killer is a man inspired by Tommy's story who is set off when his own son is killed. When that guy is killed, Tommy seems to become unhinged, dons the hockey mask himself, and looks as if he's about to start the killing anew, with his counselor, Pam, as his first victim. Stay with me here. So in part 6, haunted by Jason, Tommy goes to Jason's grave in order to destroy his body once and for all, and to make sure he's dead. But he accidentally reanimates Jason's corpse, and Jason goes on to kill, 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 all the way until the subject of this review, Jason Goes to Hell and beyond. If you follow me here and look at this in a particular way, the evil that has been killing in Crystal Lake has been swapping bodies all along, hopping from Pamela to Jason to Tommy to Roy, the killer ambulance driver, back to Tommy, and finally back to Jason. This has been a more nuanced metaphysical leap from body to body rather than the clumsily realized slug swap we get in Jason Goes to Hell, but still it feels as if there may have been an incarnation of this script that could have been a little bit more in tune with the series at one point. That doesn't mean the body swapping is a good idea, it just means that it isn't as completely out of left field as it originally seems. This death curse seems to have been hopping from one person to another all along. An interesting theory, just terribly executed in Jason Goes to Hell. It's one thing to bring up new ideas for the series, but it's unforgivable to have the film depart from everything that has gone before and go in such a vastly different direction. The main problem with Jason Goes to Hell, apart from once again failing to deliver what was promised in the title, as we get less of hell in this one, as we got of Manhattan in Part 8, is at this point, the series really had run its course. Instead of focusing on characters like Pamela, Alice, Jason, and Tommy, Parts 7 through 10 relied mainly on gimmicks in order to carry the franchise. Jason Voorhees had become a household name, kids were dressing up as him for Halloween, he was appearing on the Arsenio Hall show and in videos on MTV, and the Oversaturation chipped away at what made him scary. It was well known that Paramount was always ashamed at the millions of bucks the franchise had made for them, but they still took it anyway. And when it was bought by New Line, it was the equivalent of an adopted child being treated poorly while all of the spoils were going towards their favorite son, Freddy. This oversaturation of Jason is exemplified pretty well in the diner scene in Jason Goes to Hell. Despite being cartoonish and gaudy, the marketing of Jason in these scenes with Voorhees burgers and Jason fries actually reflects how, out of the shadows, Jason had become to the world. Not that being out of the shadows was a good thing in this one, as the look of Jason is about as sloppy and clumsy as you can get. The design of Jason is usually the highlight of the Friday the 13th films. Even when the story was shit, Jason looked menacing and awesome. For some reason, it was decided that Jason's monstrous mongoloid noggin would tumorously grow into his mask, making a facial reveal impossible, which was always a mainstay in most Friday the 13th films. Kane Hodder does his best in the 15 minutes he gets as Jason, and doesn't get to really deliver any of his subtle yet seething moves he used in previous portrayals to animate the mute monster. Speaking of Jason's vocal mutterings, not only does Jason roar and scream numerous times, he also is able to speak through one of his possessed bodies. But hell, by that point, it was obvious the filmmakers weren't interested in following any kind of consistency or rules with past incarnations, or follow their own rules, so why should I give a shit? So instead of Jason wandering around and killing, we get a whole bunch of weirdness that really doesn't fit into a Friday the 13th, such as the wasted Cretan Duke character, who Stephen Williams does a fantastic job with, yet really never gets to show us any of the action to back up the big and tough words he spouts to the press and to those around him not believing in Jason. I do have to say I love a little girl in a pink dress sticking a hot dog through a donut line. Had he been the focus of the story, there could have been a truly great climax. Instead, we get John D. LeMay in the lead. LeMay was the star of the off-center but occasionally fun Friday the 13th TV series. It makes for a weird final girl for this installment. LeMay's Steven is nebbish, smart-assed, and downright unlikable at times. Yet for some reason, convention is bucked and he survives this ordeal with Jason and even comes out as the hero. Seeing LeMay try to act tough and go fist to fist with Jason is both hilarious and pitiful, as it just makes LeMay look more ineffectual as a hero and makes Jason look weak for actually letting this dweeb get the better of him. Which leads to some foam Muppet hands reaching out of the soil and dragging Jason to hell. The hands are awkward foam mitts that are more comical than scary. They look like Muppet hands. And the final scene, as Freddy's claw emerged from the soil to pull the hockey mask under, only hints at a possible better movie to come rather than capping off a good one. And if you've never seen it, the alternate ending, which features not only the giant foam hands, but actual demons dragging him down into the ground, was actually shot, but it doesn't make it any better. I told you I'd be getting to the good parts of the film eventually, so as I wrap this review up, I guess it's time for that. Though this is one of the bloodier installments, none of the carnage actually comes from the hockey masked Jason. These scenes where the cop melts into a puddle of goo is great if it were in another film, but like everything else, it feels out of place in a Friday the 13th. Stephen Williams is wasted, but does get some decent lines, and the finger-breaking scene in the cell is hardcore. I also like it when Jason topples the jungle gym to get to his prey during the climax. It's just one of those more goofier moments that actually worked here. And that's about it in terms of something positive I can say about this ill-conceived, remedially executed, and poorly made sequel. By far, this is my least favorite of the series, and though I had to rewatch this one for the review, I hope to never have to endure it again. If you're looking to watch a Friday the 13th film tonight to celebrate the holiday, skip this one and watch any of the other ones. When the next Friday the 13th graces our calendars, it'll be time for Jason to veer off into the great void of outer space in Jason X, a film that has Friday the 13th fans split right down the middle. But that's a review for another Friday the 13th. What do you think of Jason Goes to Hell, Friday fans? Am I completely off base here or right on the money with my review? Let me know down in the comments, and happy Friday the 13th. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're